In this video, you're going to be learning how to prepare for a big talk or big presentation that you're going to give. Maybe it's a presentation in front of a larger group than you are normally accustomed to presenting to. Or perhaps you're going to be giving a talk or a pitch in front of some investors or perhaps some important people within your organization, and it's just perhaps beyond your comfort zone just a little bit. And this is a video that was inspired by a question that one of my coaching clients had asked me. And they had asked me, well, beyond the best practices that you can find just by doing a simple ChatGPT or Google search, what do you yourself, John, do? What have you found that's very useful? And so in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you a series of strategies that I use to prepare for any big talk that I give, whether it's in front of a group of 250 professionals, or perhaps it's just conducting a small pitch or presentation in front of some investors or some important people that I'm trying to influence for one reason or another. The practice really begins well in advance, whether it's months in advance or weeks in advance, just depending on how much time I have. I usually begin by simply preparing what I'm going to present and then video record myself practicing doing that, going through a mock presentation. Sometimes I'll go as far as I'll put a whole bunch of pictures up on the wall that I've kind of printed out of just random people. And I'll pretend those are the people that I'm trying to talk to. And I'll video record myself giving a presentation in front of this mock group of people. And then I'll go back and look at that video and then look at to see what I can cut out, how I can improve. And I just do that recording process over and over and over again, maybe 8 to 10 times until I feel comfortable. In conjunction with that, another form of practice that I use is that I practice while I'm driving. I vocalize my presentation while I'm driving, and I also vocalize my presentation while going for a walk. The beauty about going for a walk is that you kill two birds with one stone. Number one is you get some exercise, and number two, you can go through your entire presentation speaking out loud and moving your body a little bit more than you could if you were just practicing vocalizing while you're driving. So that's what I do in terms of practicing getting ready with my material. If I can do a mock run in front of some colleagues or some friends, I'll definitely do that as well, get their feedback as well. That makes it feel a little bit more comfortable because there's a little bit more pressure in front of that real life group of 1, 2, or 3 individuals. The night before the presentation, I make sure I get a good night's rest, 7 to 8 hours if possible. And that's all based on the idea that I strongly fear my brain not functioning at the full capacity the next day. I worry that if I don't get enough sleep, my mind might be a little bit blurry, so I'll forget something, or someone will ask a very difficult question, or I'll get interrupted and perhaps I'll lose my chain of thought. And if my brain doesn't function optimally, well, I could easily get derailed, look foolish, or have a complete presentation disaster. And so that's why I do my best to get my full night's rest. And then the next morning I wake up, I go through the presentation once while lying in bed, and then if possible I go and get a little bit of an exercise or a workout in. If there's a hotel gym, a gym near my home, or just go out for a walk somewhere. Or if that's not available, prior to the presentation, I'll just do a little bit of physical exercise in the office, in the staircase, in the side room, just somewhere to calm my nerves. And what the physical activity does is essentially inoculates me against a lot of the nervousness and anxiety that can kind of, it's very real, you feel it. It's a mental stressor, right? Worrying about how you're going to perform, but it manifests itself physically. And so physical exercise kind of inoculates myself, gets a little bit of dopamine going through my system, flushes out some of that adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones, and kind of calms me down. And so when I go into this talk, I'm in a much less aroused state, much calmer. I also make it a practice not to have anything substantial to eat for breakfast. Maybe a little bit of nibble on perhaps a little bit of carbohydrate, but other than that, I don't eat much of anything. And the reason being is that I fear that the blood is going to go to the stomach and away from my brain, and my brain's not going to function effectively. I'd rather kind of go in a little bit hungry into the talk or the presentation rather than on a full stomach and perhaps be a little bit groggy or a little bit sluggish. From a dietary or nutritional perspective, I also try to avoid drinking too much water or drinking too much caffeine. Reason being is that I don't want to feel the need to go to the restroom during the presentation or the talk or the meeting, which can really take my own focus away from the talk. And so that's kind of how I prepare physically and nutritionally prior to the event. Maybe I'll listen to a little bit of music, just like an athlete listens to music before their talk, a little pump-up music and a little bit of breathing exercise. But those are a couple other things I would add to that. Now, as I'm walking into the room, now perhaps you've been there as well, where you walk into a room and it's a bunch of strangers. Well, that's can be very uncomfortable. You're looking at a whole bunch of people looking at you, essentially judging you, and they're going, who the heck are you? What are you going to try to persuade us of? How are you going to influence us? Who are you to tell us anything? And that's not a very comfortable feeling to have. And you contrast that with going into a room where perhaps there's one or two people that you are allies with, or going into a room where you kind of know everybody. Well, that comfort level is a little bit higher. But I want to refer to a situation where you don't know anybody, and you want to reduce the stress of that. So the best strategy is essentially establish a little bit of rapport with one or two people in the audience. So arrive a few minutes early, maybe 5 or 10 minutes early if possible, and just kind of introduce yourself to one or two people. Maybe they're the ones closest to the door, they're people standing by the door or sitting near the door or sitting closest to you or closest to the back of the room, that you can just kind of say, hi, you know what, my name is John, I'm going to be giving this talk, or I'll be presenting today, I'll be doing the pitch. It's a pleasure to meet you, I just wanted to introduce myself. Just something like that, so you create a little bit of a rapport. That small bit of rapport creates a little bit of a connection. And so when you go to the front of the room, then all of a sudden you have one or two allies, or at least people that you have some sort of connection with that you can look to and speak to. And that also helps reduce the nervousness and anxiety. The last thing that I'll add to that is a couple mantras that I repeat to myself to help me kind of overcome sometimes the feeling of imposterism, or perhaps the feelings of worrying about forgetting or being judged. And the two things that I repeat to myself or remind myself of are, number one, I can't forget what I'm going to say because the audience has no idea what I'm going to say. The second thing I remind myself of is to move towards the audience, to constantly move and advance towards the audience. Where you look at the opposite is to not move away from the audience. Because if you always remind yourself to keep moving towards the audience, you're engaging, you're creating connection, you're showing confidence and executive presence. It's just a good mental remembering to keep in mind. So there you have it. A whole series of strategies that you can apply or take from to help prepare you for any upcoming big presentation that you really want to excel on. Good luck. My name is John Godoy, and I help professionals to develop their executive presence, communicate better, and to develop powerful presentations. If you're interested, contact me at john@johngodoy.com or visit my website at www.johngodoy.com to learn more. I'd love to work with you.